Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Post stories or green texts about secrets, weird and all kinds of strange things that happened and happen in your city. In the past, the city I was born in used to separate people based on their status, influence, profession, etc. Ordinary and disadvantaged people stayed in the most precarious part and were treated like animals. Almost all the entertainment, health, culture, legal, and other services were in the most developed part. Needless to say, many of them were high-ranking members of the Communist Party or independent politicians. The walls and enclosures were guarded, but sometimes the guards would take a break, and people would take the opportunity to jump out and enjoy those things I mentioned earlier. Most of them ended up in trouble because they didn't have a specific card proving that they were from that part. So they were beaten, photographed, and had their pictures pasted on a wall of shame. People also encountered many problems when they sent letters criticizing the city to magazines. These letters were confiscated and thrown into a vacant lot. The rulers idealized the place as a perfect city. I once met a guy who told me he had written 120 letters to those television programs that promised to help people move to developed cities. But most of them returned to his address, and he found some in the landfills. There are stories about a covered-up incident at the water treatment plant. And I also have traumatic and strange memories of spending time in a daycare ruled by apathetic, wicked women.
Chicago, Illinois, City of Evil, zip code 60666, rife with corruption since its inception, mafia and CIA connections, McKenna and Gacy's stomping grounds, largest gang population in the world, over 150,000, crown jewel of Mexican drug cartels, home of drill-kill demon culture, nearly 19,000 murdered within the last 30 years. What the fuck is with Chicago, and why does it feel like this city is cursed? Since its inception, the entire city has been rife from corruption and ridden with murderous gangs. It's always listed as the first or second most corrupted city in America, with even the latest mayor being complicit in scandals. Henyard. Shit, even the fucking governor of the entire state, Blagojevich, was a shady bastard. The Chicago outfit always stood out from other mafias in America too, as they were known for being the most brutal, loved to torture their victims for days on meat hooks with ice picks and blowtorches. Not only that, but they also helped JFK get elected and assassinated. Later ousted for having had tight CIA connections. See Family Jewels. The esoteric connections are there too if you look for them, specifically with the gangs. One of the biggest gang's founders, David Barksdale, came from a family of Masons, and all these gangs have obvious Masonic occult symbology. One last thing to look at is this whole drill music and kill culture craze. Not only has drill dominated and destroyed the entire music scene, countless coomers are still trying to be rappers or gangbangers. All gangs now across America are copying this new blueprint too. Is Chicago a portal to hell?
The city is a cesspit of shit. I lived there on and off over the course of 3 years and encountered horrendous amounts of drug use, abuse, neglect, violence. You name it. The city is evil, truly. Your Masonic connection to gang life is real. I met a gang member that was affiliated with the art scene that was a very proud Mason. He was weird, to say the least. More like quietly psychotic. He told me some weird-ass shit over a phone call once. You know that we're not the only ones here, right? There are others here with us. Your parents. They're not really your parents. The books you're looking for, you're not going to find them anywhere. What you need to do is join a lodge. His Finsta account on Instagram is fucking insane. There you can find a photo of a document from his lodge with the square and compass on it, strange propaganda, and most oddly, many photos involving baby dolls, gore, pizza, chicken, rabbits, Old school commercials involving food, more pizza and more pizza, videos and photos of children and toddlers with no context, BDSM references, snuff-like imagery, satanic imagery, cannibalism, an obsession with clowns, a photo detailing a statement he made on Facebook about attending parties in R. Kelly's mansion and the whole scene being aware of his proclivities unprompted. Need I spell it out for you? All right, fellas. I don't have much more information directly on this person, but I will tell you how this all came to be. I started to get very deep into researching the occult, taking it seriously for the first time in my life, and shit got incredibly weird fast. I was experimenting with gematria heavily, and started to realize simultaneously that not only was the cliché narrative of the Illuminati and occult world control true, it was far deeper and much more sinister than any one researcher or book could possibly explain. I cracked and began publicly lambasting Freemasonry, occultism, world powers, etc. on the internet for weeks and weeks straight, and started doing experiments with magic on camera. Really simple stuff at first in terms of explanations of how it works, pointing out numerical synchronicities, etc. But then I got into decoding extremely heavily to the point where I was basically in a schizo episode. I had a lot of weird shit start to happen to me that I won't get into too far, because that would derail the thread. With that being said, I started to attract a bunch of weird sock puppet accounts to my page that were watching my shit, liking my shit, and I was obsessively documenting almost every second of my day and not letting up. Just total scorched earth shit, and I seriously was feeling like there was some heat on me, that I was legitimately being monitored. All the while I was waiting for somebody in my real-life circle to call me out, to say anything to me, to challenge me, and it simply wasn't happening. I decided to push harder and started blatantly describing how to utilize gematria in real time and making connections to Freemasonry and occultism that were really kind of insane. During this time, this guy would pop in once in a while and see what I was doing. Because I was so on edge, I got a weird feeling from it and put it in the back of my mind that this guy may know something. So I keep posting. Out of the blue, dude sends me a random-ass photo of some food with no context with a pretzel emoji, which I thought was incredibly odd, considering it had nothing to do with anything. It was vague and kind of set some alarm bells off. Why is this guy communicating with me all of the sudden? He started sending me more shit all the same and monitoring me throughout the weeks. Next, he simply sent me a photo of a mop in a bucket, also odd. He then started sending unfinished paintings, which I inquired about. Why don't you finish this one, blah blah. Nothing yet. Then one day, I'm posting about the shape of the universe. By this time, I am deep into a psychotic episode. I was posting about toroids and the like, and in that slew, I posted a recursive series of images of me holding a piece of quartz that was given to me by a guy who worked in a nondescript building below my old apartment that turned out to be a government contractor testing lasers and machining parts for night vision goggles and Black Hawk helicopters. He brought me in to check out the place and showed me some schematics with math that he said he'd never seen anywhere. Pretty wild stuff. Anyway, I'm holding this quartz, and again being totally fucked, I go, "Government quartz put a hex on me," and caught repeating numbers on my phone clock, which I noted in said post and took a ton of screenshots and laid them inside one another. In the midst, I was posting shit about the Masons and really just slagging them mercilessly. It was on this post that this guy replied to me. He said, "You know nothing of Freemasonry." I swear to you, I almost shit myself with fear at this point, as I realized I had just drawn out this dude from nowhere. He played his hand. I immediately asked him, "How much longer are you going to keep your secrets? Why are you doing this? What is the point in hiding anymore? When are you going to give it up and clue in the rest of humanity?" His response was interesting. "I'm a lodge mason. Everything you know about masonry is a lie. The conspiracy is a hustle. Get money. My point is it's all distractions from you getting ahead. The government is not intelligent. I ended up sleeping with a knife for a few days after that. I was paranoid. I had no idea this person was affiliated, and he came out of the woodwork and dropped that in me as I was very clearly unwell, and it really fucked with me and sent me spiraling even further. I just looked through old messages and we talked a lot more than I remembered. Lots of shit about drugs, crack, hip-hop, etc. Nothing too pertinent, but lots of weird pictures sent. Just saw he sent me a nude of some chick out of the blue in a mirror that looked like it was sent to him and only him, not something he would have just found. Lots of the same shit from that profile, food images, horror movie stuff, but then that ass shot in the middle and talk about street shit in the city. I'm a little perturbed and don't want to talk about this much more because this is going a little far for my taste, but yeah, shit was wild. It was a horrible time. I almost flipped and joined a lodge a little while after this after we had a phone call I referenced above. This was after I had seen his profile and thought I was looking at some Minecraft YouTuber shit and called him out. I backed that up and apologized, and he reposted me on his shit publicly. Fucking weird, man. An awful time to be sure, and a much longer story than just this. I had a lot going on. But this dude would come over with other people that were working with a former roommate, and we would do blow and drink and shit as well. Things just kind of grew out of that, initially. One more thing. We were on a video call at the resolution stage of this, and I mentioned that I was scared. He told me that the only time you should ever be scared is when somebody has a gun to your head. And I can't remember if he simply made a pistol gesture towards me on camera with his fingers, or if he actually pointed a pistol at me through the camera. He told me he wakes up every day and puts his pistol to his gut, thinking about suicide constantly. It was nuts, man. Legitimately frightening and absolute rock bottom for me. I'm away from all that now and getting my shit straight, but man, that whole episode quickly turned into an actual nightmare and could have gotten far worse. I almost got roped into some shit that was way beyond my control. And I'm glad I got pulled out and got my shit sorted because it was getting incredibly real. Fast. Be careful what you say in public with your face attached to it. I had no idea this guy was affiliated.
Extremely interesting and detailed, thanks, Anon. Been down similar paths of knowledge as you, albeit less chaotic. Odd that he would tell you to focus on materials as money and hustle. Almost seems like a diversion tactic. What was his response to the Minecraft YouTuber allegations?
Yes, it was odd. Especially at that exact time because I had been doing sports calls using decodes that week and had successfully called the winners of 13 of 14 basketball games, which I have zero knowledge of, using press promotion photos and the like the night before they happened. Was talking about astrology a lot as well. It 100% was a diversion tactic, almost damage control-like. He did not respond to the Minecraft YouTuber allegations, but I called him to apologize and he knew about them. Someone had told him, but he just said, "I thought someone was talking about me. I had a feeling." He went on to insinuate that that wasn't the first time that had happened either. And by the way, I did just remember, he did point a pistol directly into the camera as he told me, "The only time you should be scared is when somebody has a gun to your head." Traumatic shit coming from a dude who had not experienced anything remotely close to street life or any of that before this. Huge wake-up call. I definitely think he recognized that I was getting a little too hot and needed to step in and take the edge off. He tried to appeal to my lust for knowledge and bait me into joining a lodge so that I could get access to their libraries, which I mulled over for a while. Went to the lodge, they accepted me and asked me to come back to be initiated on Friday the 13th, but I didn't go back. Dude actually almost flipped me out. If that happened, I would have taken the oath and been subject to having my fucking bowels ripped out if I betrayed the Brotherhood. Makes me wonder how many people whose names we know had similar shit happen to them because they got too close to the sun and were made to take the oath as an insurance policy against them, because they could not be controlled otherwise. This shit is scary, man.
It's an unremarkable city, like almost all American cities. The downtown is very large, and actually has some decent architecture, which isn't common in the US. Once you leave downtown and its surrounding areas, it quickly becomes an unremarkable and soulless city that looks the same everywhere you go. Culturally, it's unremarkable. There are no truly good hangouts or communities. You're limited to either gangbangers or the most pretentious, dull people you've ever met, even worse than LA and New York. Those places at least manage to produce some interesting people that make decent music. In Chicago, there is close to zero of that. Every once in a while there is an artist from here that breaks out, and it is the result of the number of people rather than any sort of community of people that fosters it like other cities. The most remarkable thing about the city is the lakefront and the transportation system. The transportation system is littered with screaming and begging bums smoking cigarettes and threatening people, doing drugs, etc. The worst lines run close to the lake, so they're liable to shit up those areas as well. It's a big nothing burger of a city, and I find it somehow more depressing than even smaller cities in its atmosphere. There are very few cities worth visiting here, because of people here, to be honest, and the lack of any real culture or history. I'd probably recommend Boston, and that's it. Everything else is just a circus with a few niche interests you may find tailored to you.
You obviously know nothing about it.
I live in a very rural and medieval city. There is this kind of Catholic organization that works like Freemasonry. They are basically the Catholic version of Freemasonry and control the mayor's office, the local newspaper, and every single part of the administration. I went to school with the son of one of the most important members, and he always received the maximum of the votes with the distinction, and he was praised even when he gave the same exact answers as the rest of the class. I can't say more, as exposing myself too much would bring the risk of the mayor of the city to order an involuntary commitment against me. This is the main weapon they have been using to keep the mouth shut of a lot of dissidents.
This is precisely how the Ozarks in southern Missouri work. Rural, old money, family lines, property ownership games, tax evasion, real estate fraud, etc. When I was growing up, the county judge had been something like the fourth generation to do so, a lifelong post. There is one family who owns nearly everything in the southern half of Missouri, including fucking Branson, who is getting even yet richer by pumping our Dollar General stores and selling them to dim-witted idiots to run on their own. They tried to hire my dad to be their engineer. They are funded to put plus $1 General in thousands of counties across the country. Hillbilly billionaires whose kids sold drugs at school which killed other kids. Luckily, the judge was their uncle. Otherwise, they would have been looking at murder charges. Their cousins own the funeral parlor, newspaper, Boomers Still, and every strip mall in the city and county. Friend of mine had an older brother who supplied about 10% of the bath salts, K2, spice, and synthetic weed in the country in the early 2000s. Sold drugs to middle school kids and got away with it because he used to get drunk with the sheriff's son in high school. Feds didn't touch him either. Eventually shot himself. As long as you have the name and bloodline, rural life is the same everywhere.
I live in a border college town. There's an old abandoned hotel that's been run down for over 80 years at this point. Inside, there were rooms with doll parts, dead birds and pentagrams on the floors. Probably some edgy kids that left them behind, just like us who broke in to see this stuff. There's also a camp nearby that they say is haunted. Allegedly, some killings went down there, which I remember looking up when I first heard about it as a kid, but I'm not sure what it was called. I'd have to look it up. There's also Civil War and Mexican-American War battlefields that people say are haunted. Matter of fact, the university was Fort Brown, and there are still old buildings in campus that are off-limits, left for historical preservation. Of course, people say these are haunted and that they've heard or seen things on campus when no one is around.
All right, let's do this. There is a lot to work on here, so I'm just going to Greentext the facts. The arch has secret electrical equipment installed under the structure with power cables laid through the cave network under the city. The electrical equipment operates the arch as a scalar interferometer, a type of radio laser system which can be coordinated with other similar systems aboard ships and land installations. The main task is for strategic protection of the notorious choke point that is the Old Miss in St. Louis. See the /K/Strelok post about single-actor Tom in War Games. Secondary protection duties for the NGA expanded facility for spook satellites, AYY LMAO recon and communications, etc. Also protection duties for Transcom out at Scott Air Base, a vital military base, also for the bomber wing out in Sedalia, also for the Federal Reserve building here that no one ever talks about. The Callaway nuclear power plant is the primary power source for it, if it ever needs to be used at full power. A funny meme was made that is a weather control device, which it can do, to explain some of the odd behaviors with it. You can actually pick it up using a cheap SDR dongle. From a tech perspective, it is a catenary antenna, and there are 2 feed horns for each leg of the arch. There are other similar interesting shapes, but this one forms a hot spot in what you would imagine the sort of parabolic reflector shape the arch makes in profile. It isn't parabolic, but catenary, meaning the focus point has different characteristics. One is that it is effectively steerable by varying whether or not the input power to each leg of the antenna is either in cancellation out of phase, amplification in phase, somewhere in between, operation in different leg frequencies, operation using chirp and pulse mode, and lastly, plain old normal one-way electricity. PIC related. Konstantin Mile, PhD, sells a kit where you can demonstrate scalar waves and their capability to transmit faster than the speed of light. You can also download the plans and make it yourself, whatever. Also, his work on neutrinos is spot on. What does this have to do with the arch? When you see videos of glowing plasma orbs, that is often the intersection of 2 scalar interferometer beams. The areas where they amplify so much to heat the air, such as a microwave would, they get that hot. The distance between the plasma balls indicates the direction, wavelength in use, mode of operation, etc. When the arch was built, it ran on super simple analog controls and used a huge amount of power. Now, with digital controls and better control of the waveforms, it essentially becomes a giant electric tuning fork stuck in the ground, which can be pumped with enough electricity to make a plasma ball in the middle and launch it so fast it would appear as a line, not a moving object. Other systems like HARP, modern phased array radar systems on land and ship, and a few space assets as well. The principle of destructive interference is a mathematical convenience, because the question is, if energy is conserved via thermodynamics, if 2 lasers were set up to exactly destructively interfere perfectly along the length of their beams somehow, then a person could, in principle, walk through it and not be cut in half. If there were a technique to sort of split them apart a little bit at a specific location, then put them back together real quick, makes for a neat weapon. Can shoot hot or cold shots, fire or freeze. A third beam, sometimes called the trigger beam, sets it off on target. The arch, or other similar national assets, supply the bulk power while a ship, or SF operator, supplies the pinch, trigger, activation, construction beam, and makes the boom. The arch is a hyperweapon. Also, lizard people live in the caves under St. Louis and the ancient Cahokia ruin site. The Piazza Thunderbird is real. It shows up around storm times. It likes the arch for some reason. What else? Also, the lizard people who live in the cave networks under the city are connected to the massive dumb network across the country. The lizard people here are the ones the Cahokians worshipped before the Native American War came that killed the lizard rulers. Those were the giants who the Indians talk about who were here when they came over the land bridge. Common story here. They lizard people are super angry about the radioactive waste pits here in St. Louis, dripping onto their homes and nests under the city. This place is a fucking hive. Also, we have a few cult headquarters, Scientology has a base here, and Christian Science has a cult compound on the river. Boeing used to have a cult compound for visitors where they had the Illuminati pyramid and I painted on the private swimming pool. Also getting a few Gnostic sex cults popping up occasionally with the meth tweakers. Most of everything I wrote here was a mashup of all the things I've been told since moving here.
Couple years ago, I moved from Albany, New York to New Lebanon for cheaper rent and to get away from the city. It's a typical miserable small town. I was looking into the town's history, and in the 1800s, a company called Tilden Pharmaceutical started here and became America's first big pharma. Their products were made of New Lebanon native plants and weed and cocaine, and the usual 1800s medicine. Apparently, they used some Mohican healing magic water in some of their shit, too. The weird thing is that for such a massive company, their history is sparse. Their headquarters, of which photos exist, is allegedly gone. Nobody knows where in New Lebanon it was. Moreover, the company's fate is completely unknown. Did it go out of business or was it acquired? Unknown. When did it disappear? Nobody knows. It's like it just vanished one day and nobody noticed. All of New Lebanon's biggest industries shut down in the 50s and 60s and fucked off somewhere, and nobody knows why. Is all this shit not really weird? Maybe I'm spurging out over nothing, but I feel like there's some weird shit with this company.
Not a city thing. But in Colorado, west of Denver, off Interstate 70, where the road meets the mountains and Front Range, there have been sightings of UFOs and rumors of aliens. A UFO sighting, a group of 12 employees at the Red Rocks Amphitheater said they saw a disappearing alien craft far out north of the venue. Also continuing, it may just be me being a bit of a nut job, but that region a few miles around where Interstate 70 meets the mountains feels incredibly paranormally and spiritually charged. There is an incredibly old graveyard, an old fairground called Heritage Square that now sits abandoned with a bunch of empty buildings. A religious Christian Catholic shrine called the Mother Cabrini Shrine, situated on a short mountaintop, dedicated to a nun who performed miracles. A spot where a bunch of dinosaurs, bones, and prints were unearthed by shifting earth. And of course, the incredibly strange and specific concentration of red soil and rocks that the amphitheater was built on or near. Being in a mile or two radius of the area at night fills me with a strange energy and makes my hairs stand on end. Just a gut feeling, but it's definitely weird. I used to go up to Winter Park a few times a year, up there past the Continental Divide, just before the tunnel. One of the locals at the A-Frame breakfast restaurant said that they oftentimes see will-o-wisp, ball lightning, UFOs, stuff like that up there. I sort of wondered if it was all the granite in the range getting shaken by tremors and causing upward lightning bolts, but having nothing like a cloud to connect to, as in a normal sort of lightning strike, rather forming a ball lightning and flying off. All because I had read somewhere that rainbows and auroras sometimes precede major earthquakes near mountains, like a giant piezoelectric generator with nowhere to dump its electricity except as ball lightning, built up by normal crust movement. I am also completely for it actually being creatures. Backcountry camping during a 14er can brought out some too spooky for me.
There is a house in the town I grew up in that is surrounded by a chain-link fence that has barbed wire around the top of it. It's near a former training school for mentally disabled people that operated back from the 1920s to 1970s, that apparently was sterilizing some of the patients, practicing eugenics. There is also one of the largest graveyards in the town near it, more or less between this former hospital and the house itself. The windows of the house are boarded up. There are multiple no trespassing signs on the fence. The town heralds it as a historical landmark, but nobody knows anything about it, which is odd as the town has many other historically preserved houses that are open to the public, and the history of them is transparent and detailed. The history of this house is that it is just an old farmhouse. There is now a steel walkway that has been built on the back of it, with a small mezzanine, I assume, to access different levels of the house, because the interior stair has failed because of how old the house is. When I was in high school, the windows weren't boarded up, and we would often go stand outside it late at night and talk about it. People would freak out and say they saw stuff in the windows. I always just assumed they were full of shit, but it was easy to get spooked. Eventually, some other kids cut the lock on the gate and broke in. Apparently, and I always believed this was a rumor, there were porcelain dolls scattered around randomly on tables, not in some organized way, but almost like it was just a storage building for these dolls. I remember other rumors that the last owner murdered his family there. Having been there multiple times, I am certain there is a negative spiritual energy associated with the entire area, and specifically with that house. There have been a bunch of contracts awarded lately for environmental work for the house and surrounding area. No idea what that could entail.
I also learned late last year of a former friend that got implicated in a bunch of fucked up behavior that resulted in learning things about them I wish I could forget about forever. That being said, this person was attending blood parties in Chicago that were allegedly giant orgies where people would drink each other's blood. They were invited by a creep-ass artist dude who allegedly has connections to Kat Von D and had attended these parties in the past. There's a lot of shit going on there, man, and it's weird how the city pops up every once in a while in these obscure occult stories but is not talked about very often in the open. It's incredibly hush-hush. I've seen more than a few people online, anonymous or otherwise, name Chicago as an important nexus of the occult in America. You visit or live there for any amount of time and you can see that shit. People are fucked up out there.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.